When split-second decisions mean the difference between life and death, ordinary people transform into heroes. But should we expect civilians to risk their lives in situations like this? A devastating shooting incident that unfolded at Sky Meadow Country Club in Nashua, New Hampshire, on Saturday evening, September 20th, 2025, could have claimed many more lives if not for the extraordinary bravery displayed by restaurant patrons who refused to stand by as tragedy struck. The horrific event, which occurred while a joyous wedding celebration was underway, resulted in the death of 59-year-old Robert DeCesar Jr. and left 2 additional victims fighting for their lives after sustaining gunshot wounds. But here's where it gets controversial. Witnesses report that the carnage was halted not by law enforcement, but by brave civilians who took matters into their own hands. According to New Hampshire Attorney General John Formella and Nashua Police Chief Tevin Rourke, the alleged perpetrator has been identified as Hunter Nadeau, a 23-year-old Nashua resident who previously worked at the country club. Nadeau now faces charges of second-degree murder for the deliberate killing of DeCesar, with additional charges expected to follow for the other shooting victims. And this is the part most people miss. The true heroes of this story aren't wearing badges or uniforms. Attorney General Formella specifically praised what he called selfless acts of courage by the patrons in the restaurant who put aside care for their own safety and worked to intervene and stop the shooter. These ordinary people made an extraordinary choice that likely prevented a massacre. The most striking act of intervention came when a patron grabbed a chair and struck Nadeau over the head in a desperate attempt to neutralize the threat. Wedding DJ Michael Homewood, who witnessed the chaos firsthand, didn't mince words when describing the impact of this brave act. He hit him over the head with a chair, and he probably saved a bunch of lives just doing that. But here's where the situation becomes even more complex and potentially controversial. During the mayhem, multiple witnesses reported hearing Nadeau shout, "Free Palestine," a detail that raises uncomfortable questions about possible political motivations behind the violence. However, investigators have not yet determined whether this represents the shooter's actual motive, or was simply part of what Formella described as an apparent attempt to cause chaos in the moment, rather than demonstrate hate-based motivation. The investigation continues as authorities work to uncover what drove a former employee to return to his workplace with deadly intent. What's particularly puzzling to investigators is that no known connection exists between Nadeau and his victim, DeCesar, making the targeting seem random and even more terrifying. Initially, law enforcement believed they might be dealing with multiple shooters, which added to the confusion and terror experienced by the approximately 100 people who were evacuated from the scene. The realization that only one gunman was responsible came as both relief and continued bewilderment about the scope of violence one individual could inflict. The human cost extends far beyond the 3 gunshot victims. At least 4 additional people suffered non-gunshot injuries during the pandemonium, while others sustained lacerations, a broken hand, and blunt force trauma as they desperately sought safety. One of the surviving gunshot victims, a club employee, remains hospitalized in critical but stable condition, while the status of the other victim remains unknown. Perhaps the most heart-wrenching perspective comes from Charlene DeCesar, who lost her husband in the attack. In her own words, she and her family are unbelievably traumatized as they grapple with a loss that has forever changed their lives. Yet even in her grief, she finds meaning in tragedy, believing that Rob was trying to protect me and my daughter, and maybe others there too. In our hearts, he's a hero. Charlene's account provides crucial insight into the shooting's progression. She revealed that she and her daughter were positioned closest to Nadeau when he entered the room, and that he appeared to be targeting a restaurant employee specifically. "My husband got caught in the fire trying to protect us," she explained, painting a picture of a man who died shielding his family from harm. The widow also issued a plea that highlights a disturbing trend in our digital age: the spread of misinformation following tragic events. She urged the public to beware the speculation and utter nonsense that is being posted about what happened and why, emphasizing that such rumors only make the situation harder for everyone involved, including the police who are trying to do their job. Witness accounts paint a vivid picture of how quickly celebration turned to terror. Sophie Flaberis described the jarring transition from wedding festivities to life or death survival. "We had just gathered around the dance floor. We were about to do a Greek smashing of the plates and throwing the dollar bills. The bride had just come up to me and gave me the plates to say, 'All right, you give this to my husband.' And all of a sudden we heard pop, 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 pop. Heard 5 shots. Emily Ernst's description of the shooter adds another chilling detail. He had a mask on. We just saw him raise the gun, and then we ran. I ran through the kitchen for my life." The image of a masked gunman systematically targeting innocent people at a wedding celebration underscores the random, senseless nature of the violence. Tom Bartleson, whose nephew's wedding became the backdrop for this nightmare, captured the surreal nature of the experience. Getting together for a dance for the bride and groom, and then all chaos went off. We heard about 6 shots and everybody ducked for cover, and next thing you know, we're rushed into safe spots and things like that. Governor Kelly Ayotte has promised that the Attorney General's office will provide full support to the Nashua police investigation, while expressing her prayers for the victims and their families. The shooting occurred in Nashua, located approximately 45 miles northwest of Boston, just across the Massachusetts border, as Nadeau prepares for his arraignment at the Ninth Circuit Court in Nashua on Monday. Many questions remain unanswered. What drives someone to return to their former workplace with deadly intent? How do we balance the heroism of civilian intervention with the risks such actions pose? And perhaps most controversially, should ordinary citizens be expected to put themselves in harm's way when trained professionals aren't immediately available? The tragic events at Sky Meadow Country Club force us to confront uncomfortable truths about violence in our society and the split-second decisions that can mean the difference between life and death. While we celebrate the heroes who stepped up when it mattered most, we must also grapple with the reality that such heroism should never be necessary. What do you think? Should civilians be expected to intervene in active shooter situations? Or does this place an unfair burden on ordinary people? Do the political statements allegedly made by the shooter change how we should interpret this tragedy? Or are they simply the ravings of someone intent on causing maximum chaos? Share your thoughts on whether our society is doing enough to prevent such senseless violence, and whether the hero narrative, while inspiring, might mask deeper systemic failures that allowed this tragedy to occur in the first place.